Ben Franklin said, "Tell me, and I will forget. Teach me, and I may remember. Involve me, and I will learn." And I am here to involve you today. Today's topic is prescribed epidemic. I'm Dr. Ryan Weaver, a chiropractor here with Apex Spinal Performance. We're really going to talk about something that I am passionate about, especially in the state of Ohio, in the Midwest, and the Ohio Valley region. Prescribed epidemic, we're going to take an inside look at some of the statistics of synthetic drug overdoses, other pain killers, and other medications that can lead to street drugs, illegal drugs, and most of the time, people just see a drug addict or something of the nature and don't understand how did that may have happened in the first place. And the big misunderstanding is many people don't know that a lot of it has came from synthetic drugs, such as medication or prescription painkillers. So we're going to dive into this, and you may all understand that that's a huge problem. It really got overshadowed by COVID the last few years, but it really hasn't changed, and really in the state, my home state of Ohio here, it is a very, very big deal. So the opioid crisis, we talk about what are some of the drugs. You may have heard of Oxycontins and fentanyl. Those are probably the biggest ones. And when you look at the CDC Injury Center, they look at deaths and non-fatal overdoses in the 4 categories: natural opioids, methadone, synthetic opioids, and heroin. So you may be wondering, why does this chiropractor talk about these, or why do we do these spinal workshops? And before we look at each one of those individually, we do these spinal workshops to educate you on Facebook, on YouTube, our patients here at the office, most importantly our community, because people need to know these things. Again, when I look back at some of the numbers that we're going to go over, they really, again, were overshadowed in 2020, 2021 because of COVID. But again, why we do these, because people don't know, you don't know what we don't know, and neither do I. So we're going to dive into this right now. Natural opioids, so morphine, oxycodone, hydrocodone, methadone, so synthetic opioids, and the synthetic opioids, traditionally tramadol and fentanyl, which again, fentanyl has got a lot of publicity lately. Heroin is actually an opioid synthesized from morphine. So once again, I'm here to involve you in this, and the more that you play along and involve yourself and listen to these numbers, maybe take some notes, the more educated you're going to be in the future when it comes to what decisions do you have or your loved ones. So chronic pain. It's one of the biggest things. Yes, low back pain, which we'll get to in a moment, but chronic pain, 30% of Americans, 116 million people, will be involved in this. This is why we have the opioid crisis. So to give you some more numbers here, diabetes, huge number. A lot of people know about diabetes. In America, 30.3 million people suffer from that. The next one, how about heart disease? 25.4 million, and the big one, cancer, 14.7 million. So if you added all those up, we still don't get to 116 million people in America who will suffer from chronic pain. So odds are you know somebody in your family who has had that. So in 2020, okay, this is in Montgomery County in Ohio, 297 died in 2020. 310 in 2021. These again were all from overdoses. In Ohio, since 2020, this date was to December 9th, 2021. So since 2020 to the end of 2021, basically, 7,447 overdoses. Of fentanyl was 7,008 of those. So again, a lot that has been overshadowed, doesn't get talked about enough. You may occasionally see this on the news, and that's where I picked this up. I was on TV one time and saw this come across the screen. So anytime I ever see things like this, because again, it usually is just covered one day and moves on, and we don't hear anything about it. So really, Looking at Ohio filed a lawsuit against 5 drug companies for aiding in the opioid crisis. I'm going to get to one of those companies in a moment. So our friends, our bordering state of West Virginia, they actually mandated a law that chiropractic care first had to be utilized before opioids. And then in New Hampshire, research on chiropractic care utilization and less opioids. So again, you're starting to see we're recognizing prescribed epidemic, we're recognizing an opioid crisis, and it needs to still be, why is this happening? What other options can we do? So going back to the 90s, you may have heard of the family called the Sackler family. They Purdue Pharmaceutical, they came out with OxyContin, which has an addiction rate of 4 days. The Sackler family are 3 medical doctors patented OxyContin, which is a sister drug to heroin, 2 times stronger than morphine. So in '95, really where this whole crisis kind of kicked off was a marketing strategy from Purdue Pharmaceutical. OxyContin is the drug to start with and stay with. This shifted the whole culture of prescribing medications. From 2002 to 2017, there was a 3.1-fold increase in deaths, a national overdose of deaths involving drugs. That was referenced by the NIH. Back to our state of Ohio. 10 Ohioan drug overdoses. 8 of those were typically prescribed a drug, a painkiller for chronic pain. And this is the issue. Of those 8, how many of them become addicted to those painkillers? And then again, when you look at, well, how much do those drugs cost versus street drugs? You know, for a Percocet 30 that may be $30, you could get the same high or hit on something like heroin for a third of the cost. So you think, and I want you to think about this, and maybe you've even taken, you know, a painkiller before. Maybe you have had a surgery where they gave that to you as well. And you think you may be taking 3 to 5 in a day. That's a very expensive drug habit. $90 to $150. So you add that up, it becomes very, very, very expensive. So when you look at what's the problem, what's the solution, what's our results, you know, obviously chronic pain is the problem, okay? The solution that we are most familiar with is medicate it and kill the pain so I don't feel it. And again, that pain is there, you know, and I'm not talking necessarily about a surgery, which again, that may be warranted because obviously you need to lay there. The pain is telling you to heal, not to move, but for something is, hey, I have a backache or a neck ache, and taking a prescribed painkiller for that. The result that we usually see is possibly death from an opioid overdose. So we have a problem, and it's, again, more so and extremely passionate for me because how high Ohio is in the ranking of overdoses. And the only state, you heard me mention West Virginia earlier, they were number 1, I believe that was 2017, and we were, as Ohioans, second in terms of overdoses or overdose deaths. So I referenced this all in 2022. Again, these spinal workshops, the basis of why we do these come from Ralph Kinney's research at Duke University. The leading cause of death in 2012 was poorly made choices. So a pretty notable university, and they found that the number 1 cause of death is that we just make poor choices, that we don't know what we don't know. So I put this information out to you to let you know how big of an issue this is and the other things that you can do besides take a pill or a medication. So, you know, when I look at our community, every week I do these spinal workshops, from something like today, Prescribed Epidemic, to Open Mic, which this year is going to be new, where we're going to be talking about, you know, things and trends that we see on social media, maybe in our office, diagnoses, what can you do for those things? Because I want you to have a big toolbox besides medication or surgery. So every Tuesday we're going to have these workshops. We've continued to do that over all of last year. We put them on YouTube now so that you can always access these. So we have a library of these. But it's a big issue in our community. And I see all generations from 2-day-olds to patients into their 90s. And when I look at that and see the older population or middle-aged, hey, what they wish they would have done differently, have your spine checked. The worst thing we can say is there's some things here that need to be addressed now because in the long run it's going to save you time, energy, effort, finances as well. But not just from a pain standpoint, but a quality of life. We have this, what we call a question of truth. What is it that you want to be able to do that maybe you can't do, or maybe to the ability that you used to be able to do that? The easy example is, picking up kids or grandkids. Are you still able to do that? Because we want you to live a long, thriving, proactive life than accepting, hey, here's a lunchbox or a tackle box, I usually say, of medications you have to take on a daily basis. So I challenge you to take action, put your health as the number one priority, because if you aren't able to care for yourself, how can you care for others? So thank you for being on here, and we'll see you next week for our next spinal workshop. Thanks, take care, stay healthy.